From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Coming up on AgDay.
And this is where I fell, from the very top.
A fun day of hunting landed one man in the hospital. His warning before you head out into the woods.
Hey, stay tuned folks. Coming up, we're going to talk about a pair of very rare international tractors that sold Saturday.
And a new dialogue between the U.S. and China as the trade war continues.
In addition to these opportunities to strengthen our cooperation, I was forthright in addressing significant differences between our nations.
AgDay, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. An important meeting for Chinese and U.S. officials ahead of the G20 summit in Argentina later this month. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Secretary of Defense James Mattis meeting with two high-ranking Chinese policymakers in Washington Friday. It was the second time the two sides have taken part in these high-level talks. Pompeo said both sides had a constructive dialogue, calling the discussions incredibly productive, while also pointing out their significant differences.
The United States is not pursuing a Cold War or containment policy with China. Rather, we want to ensure that China acts responsibly and fairly in support of security and prosperity of each of our two countries. I hope that our discussions today, as well as the upcoming discussions between Presidents Trump and Xi, will yield tangible results towards this goal. I am confident that they will.
A Chinese official called the dialogue candid, constructive, and productive. He said it is of great importance to maintain a steady and healthy development of China-U.S. relations. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says farmers are expected to harvest the largest soybean crop on record, but they have to deal with a constricted market in which to sell their crop because of the administration's tariff battle with China. It is the latest update released Thursday. USDA expecting soybean harvest to tally 4.6 billion bushels, the largest ever. Illinois leads soybean production with 688 million bushels. In Iowa, second place. Selling soybeans to China is nearly halted with those tariff disputes, resulting in growing stockpiles and the lowest prices for farmers in more than a decade. Corn production, it's estimated at 14.6 billion bushels, the second largest crop on record. Iowa remains the nation's leading corn producer with an expected 2.5 billion bushel harvest. All of this could mean changes in the spring.
If we look at the two, soybeans to corn, we start thinking about that March prospective planning about what producers are going to plant next spring in terms of corn and soybean use. Obviously, this will differ throughout the Midwest and some of our major producing states based on cost structure and yield structure or yield potential. But at least there is some favoritism, at least towards corn on upside price potential here in some of our Midwest states. It's still going to be tight as soybeans looks to still return significant returns, at least over corn.
So what to do with all those stocks? The USDA says it will begin buying up U.S. farm products next month as part of the Trump tariff aid plan. But the amount of some products is so large, some food banks have told the USDA they may not have the storage. Meanwhile, Smithfield, owned by the Chinese firm WH Group, will sell 144,000 pounds of pork product to the U.S. government. This, according to the Washington Post, it equates to about $240,000 worth of product. And what about dropping those tariffs that remain with Canada and Mexico? According to Politico, Canada and the U.S. have had informal talks about steel quotas. That's in exchange for dropping the current 25% tariff on Canadian steel. Meanwhile, sources are reporting Mexico may hold a signing ceremony for the new USMCA at the G20 summit in Argentina. Mexico's economy minister says it's not desirable to sign an agreement without considering the tariffs. Congress is set to return to work tomorrow. Tuesday marks the beginning of the lame duck session. High on the priority list, finishing that 2018 Farm Bill. The likely incoming chair of the House Agriculture Committee, Minnesota's Colin Peterson, says Farm Bill negotiators are, quote, relatively close, end quote, to an agreement. Differences on new work requirements for some people on nutrition assistance continues to be the major sticking point between the House and Senate versions of the bill. Washington watchers say it's likely House Republicans are ready to pass a compromise during the lame duck session rather than starting the process completely over in a Democratic-controlled House. The faces of agriculture leadership at state levels could be changing following those elections last week. The National Association of State Departments of Agriculture says nearly half of the country could see new ag commissioners. New ag commissioners were elected in Alabama, Florida, and Iowa. 18 states elected new governors, including 8 new governors who represent a change in the political party of their predecessors. Those new 8 governors will appoint a new chief agricultural official. Environmentalists are celebrating a federal court order that blocks an administration permit for construction of the Keystone XL pipeline. The pipeline would begin in Alberta and shuttle as much as 830,000 barrels a day of crude through a half-dozen states to terminals on the Gulf Coast. The U.S. District Judge essentially delayed the $8 billion project to study its environmental impact. Now, environmentalists and Native American groups sued to stop the project, citing property rights and potential oil spills. Keystone says it's committed to building the pipeline despite that ruling. Last week ended with a wintry blast across big parts of the country. Mike Hoffman joins us now with a look at what's become the first snow of the season. Mike?
Thanks, Clinton. Well, winter came early in Missouri after last winter produced very little snow there. Missouri farmers woke up to a winter blanket on their fields. As you can see, beans still sit in this field, now covered with snow. This just reiterates how much of a roller coaster year it's been for weather, from way too dry to way too wet and now way too white. Taking a look at the situation as far as the drought monitor is concerned, we are looking at the dry conditions continuing in western states, but we really have almost no issues east of the Continental Divide. We'll have details on your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Keeping track of the shifting market prices has never been so easy. Get the latest commodity prices sent directly to your cell phone with market updates. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
If you're starting to plan your holiday meals, you don't have to worry about cranberries. The USDA saying there will be an ample supply of cranberries. Production forecast at 8.63 million barrels. That's up 3% from a year ago. And if the production mark is hit, it will be the 3rd largest in history. Now, Wisconsin, they're the leading producer of cranberries, accounting for about half of the total area harvested over the past 3 years. And despite some frost damage, Wisconsin is expected to contribute 550 million pounds of cranberries. Still ahead, some analysis as we take a closer look at the livestock industry. And later, how to avoid a day of deer hunting from turning into a trip to the hospital in the country.
Ag Day, brought to you by Instinct and N-Serve nitrogen stabilizers. They don't just stabilize nitrogen, they maximize it, so crops deliver the max in return. Learn more at maxinmaxout.com.
The market's continuing to seesaw following the release of new crop production numbers. Worries about stocks. Here's more now from the CME.
Soybeans were higher. The market is consolidating a little bit. It's consolidating to the upside, so it really got a little bit of a head of steam, in spite of the fact that that USDA report was definitely, bearish on the market. We had some wild swings yesterday, and maybe there was a little bit of recovery, and the market started to get a little bit of a lift. Corn, not so much. It was lower. That USDA real yield revision really sat on the futures, and there's a lot of uncertainty on how to actually read it. With China and the rest of the world, the supply-demand numbers really were so explosive. When we first saw it, everyone thought that there had to have been a mistake, and so it was very difficult to trade. That's why you saw such huge volatility yesterday. Wheat also slipped today, maybe 4 or 5 cents, still holding that $5 benchmark, but that mild USDA report is really baked into the prices. It just wasn't as bearish as corn and soybeans. And with that in mind, the market slipped a little bit. Interestingly enough, there are some good things on the horizon. Exports were up, and a number of there has been a cut in the yield of wheat in Australia, and even some issues in the Ukraine and in Europe. That's all from the floor at the CME Group. Here in Chicago, I'm Virginia McGathy.
Here now with Scott Brown of the University of Missouri. Scott, we've heard a lot of talk about the economy. Maybe we're seeing it slow down. Are we are we going to see a recession? Are we going to see kind of the economy take a downturn? If that happens, what commodities will be impacted the most?
Well, I think number one, you can look at beef as one of the first ones, especially when you see just that demand for the higher quality beef that we have today. All of a sudden, if consumers start buying down in those beef purchases because they have less money in their pockets, I think that could be really harmful to the beef industry. I look at the pork side and I go, we're just going to put a lot of pork out on the marketplace again in 2019. We do not need a domestic economy that slows down when we want to move records amount of pork potentially on those domestic markets.
And it seems like with beef and with pork, it's been the domestic markets that have been so strong for prices.
Absolutely. I think when we look back at 2018, we're going to say the domestic demand for both beef and pork has continued to be strong. And I think it's related to the job growth that we've seen, as well as increases in wage rates that we've seen here in the last few months out of the reports that we get, that I think are going to be super important to continue into 2019.
At this point, how concerned are you about the U.S. economy?
I don't see too many signs yet that make me too concerned here in the very short run. In fact, we continue to see unemployment rates at the lowest levels in decades. Some stronger wage growth continuing to occur. I think we're a ways away from seeing that downturn, but we know there are cycles to that general economy, and I just hope that we can get through the very large supplies that we likely see in 2019.
What would be your first sign? What are you watching that would be a hint of maybe there's trouble brewing when it comes to the U.S. economy?
Well, I think we really need to watch those job numbers and see them continue to grow as we move ahead. Whether wage rates can continue to expand as we move forward, I think is a little less important than just getting continued increases in job numbers.
All right, Scott Brown, University of Missouri, thank you so much. Let's take a quick break and then we'll have much more right here on Ag Day.
Join Andrew McCrae for Farming the Countryside, a farmer-focused podcast that is all about production agriculture. Farming the Countryside is available wherever you listen to your favorite podcast and is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, the world's largest provider of crop inputs and services.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Your meteorologist Mike Hoffman looking at rainfall over the past week. And Mike, you can see why it's been one of the wettest stretches on record for the middle of the country, at least east of the Rockies.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's a little bit drier in the Corn Belt than we've seen recently, and we have drier weather coming. That's the good news. We'll get to that in a moment, but first let's take a look at this week. As you can see, there were pockets that got an inch of moisture, rain or melted snow across the middle of the country, but the majority of the rain really was in the south and the east, as you can see. And some of these areas ended up with 2 to 3 inches from southeast there near Beaumont, Texas, over toward southwestern portions of Louisiana. Even parts of eastern Louisiana got some pretty good moisture in the panhandle of Florida. A few pockets up across Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas as well. In the east, a lot of the rain stayed just offshore of the Carolinas, but you still got a decent amount there, and you really didn't need any more, obviously. The big cities, New York, Washington, and then down toward Raleigh, got some decent moisture as well. All right, let's take a look at the weather pattern this week. We're still in that trough in the east, ridge in the west pattern, which will always bring the cold air into much of the lower 48, especially east of the Continental Divide. There's a jet stream by Wednesday, a trough deep into the southeast, as you can see, and a strong trough once again into the Great Lakes in the northeast. Now, here's where things will relax a little bit after this secondary trough comes in. There's Friday. That trough goes on through the Great Lakes in the northeast, and we go zonal for a little while. And our model's actually showing a trough digging into the far west by early next week, with a little bit of a ridge in the east. Now, I don't think that's probably going to stay there. When you still see the ridge in the west, right off the west coast, this trough's probably going to come east again. So temporarily, we will see a relaxing of the cold weather in the east. But for temperatures this week, pretty easy forecast. Just about everybody east of the Continental Divide, below normal temperatures are expecting. It's going to be way below normal in the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and the Northeast. Above normal temperatures expected out west. Precipitation this week, hey, we haven't seen a map like this in a long time. Most of the country below normal. Unfortunately, the places that were wettest last week, well, we're going to be wettest again this week. All right, 30-day outlook for temperatures. Most of the Mississippi Valley, Tennessee, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, below normal all the way down through Texas, above normal west of the Continental Divide and the far southeast. Precipitation over the last 30 days, above normal from the eastern Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast, below normal northern plains and parts of the west. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We'll head to Boise, Idaho. First of all, lots of sunshine and chilly. High temperature of 46 degrees. Fort Smith, Arkansas, cold with a bit of rain and drizzle, high of 43. And Charleston, West Virginia, mostly cloudy. There'll be a shower in some spots. High temperature around 50 degrees.
Now we want to take a moment and recognize one of our own. Tyne Morgan, the host of our partner broadcast, U.S. Farm Report, and a regular contributor to AgDay, was recently awarded the Doan Award. She was presented that award at the annual National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention. The Doan Award recognizes and encourages excellence in reporting of agriculture. Tyne and photojournalist Mike Byers won the award for a segment they produced on the trade war with China. From all of us here at Farm Journal Media, congratulations, Tyne. Well earned. Up next, Machinery Pete talks the big boys, prices for 7488s, and later, if you're headed out to the deer woods this month, take a minute to think safety. The staggering statistics every hunter ought to know.
Prepare for the future of ag technology at Farm Journal's Ag Tech Expo, December 3rd through the 5th in Indianapolis. Sign up today at farmjournalagtechexpo.com.
As you put the horses away for the winter, it may be time to look at replacing a few of those bigger machines. Machinery Pete joins us with more.
Well, folks, what are the odds? I mean, I'm talking astronomical here. I'm talking about the chance that 2 of the 16 ever produced International 7488 tractors would be up for sale the same day in 2 different auctions. Well, that was the case Saturday, November 10th. Now here's a picture of the first one. This 7488, which was number 14 of the 16 produced, had 5,439 hours on it and was up for sale in Laverne, Minnesota, out in the southwest part of the state. This was a sale by Weeman Land and Auction. Now also on Saturday over in Davenport, Iowa, by the good folks at Mecum Auction with their Gone Farming Collector Sale, this 7488, which was number 12 of 16 produced, was also up for sale. Now going into the sale Saturday, folks, I'd ever only seen 2 7488 sold at auction. Here's a picture of the first one. This was back on October 9th of 2013, way up in northwest North Dakota. 5,000 hours on it, 500 on an overhaul, kind of okay condition. Sold for $71,000. And of course that was the record price until last September 9th, 2017, out in southeast Pennsylvania, where this 7488 with 4,492 hours on it, sold for $105,000. Now folks, I record this segment for AgDay on Fridays, so it was one day before the pair of 7488 sold Saturday. Now if you want to find out what they went for, go to machinerypete.com, because I'll post a blog Saturday night, let you know what they went for, see if they got close to that 105,000 record.
Deer hunting season is now underway, but before you head up into that tree stand, there are a few things you should know. That's next in the country.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
Gun hunting season for deer is now underway in Missouri, and for many, it's tradition. But 1/3 of all hunters will suffer a serious injury at some point. Teresa Snow with the University of Missouri has this safety warning from a mid-Missouri man who's built his business around shooting in the great outdoors.
Midway USA relies on high-tech automation to keep customer orders moving smoothly through the facility west of Columbia. But it's in this back stairwell where Larry Potterfield retreats to strengthen his injured leg. A year ago, it was a dark and icy morning and a walk up this deer stand that put him in surgery. Hunting with his grandson, the accident happened 10 feet up, opening the door to his box blind.
I was fighting that just a little bit. I got to here, and this is where I fell from the very top. How long did that take? It's really, really quick.
Potterfield broke his leg, pelvis, and cheekbone. A year later, he's happy to show orthopedic surgeon Brett Christ how well he's doing. The trauma specialist at University of Missouri Healthcare, a hunter himself, has researched these types of falls.
We actually published an article on these injuries, and a lot of times it was related to a non-certified deer stand, like people would make their own.
In addition to using a good quality tree stand, don't attempt to put it up alone. Inspect it in the daylight before the hunt. Use a haul line to bring up your gear and wear a full body harness.
They're very easy to wear. They're not cumbersome or uncomfortable or anything else. Part of the resistance of hunters to wear those things is that they've been doing it forever, for a really long time, the exact same way. So why would they do it now? And the reality is that their time is coming.
Potterfield has replayed those 11 steps over and over in his mind.
How would I have prevented that? Well, at the top, I knew that the door was part of the problem and the lack of friction, not enough friction.
So he added rubber soles to his boots, also stair edging on the steps, a second handrail, and a door handle large enough to grip while wearing gloves. Always putting safety first, ready for another successful hunt. From the University of Missouri, I'm Teresa Snow.
Doctors also recommend that you tell someone exactly where you'll be hunting and when to expect you home, and always carry your cell phone. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in, spent part of your day with us. From all of us here at AgDay, have a great week.